apocalypse. Tell a little about that.
You're one of the few people who know about that.
I know, but...
I guess the cat's out of the bag now.
Yeah, tell us about that. How that...
Well, it came about because Ingrid Bergman, the great Swedish actress who played opposite Glenn Ford in The Four Horsemen, she spoke English, but it was very hard to understand her English, and they were really in a dilemma.
This was a huge picture, big budget.
So when they had a preview, they discovered that the audience didn't know what she was saying. So they asked me if I would consider doing this, that we wouldn't tell anybody I was going to do it, that I would simply do it.
Redub the whole part.
Redub the entire part. And so they sent me the script, and I read through it, and I practiced my best Swedish accent, which I picked up from Ingrid, and I did it. I stood in a looping room, with the lines going across the screen, mouthing her, fitting my words to her mouth. And it took me probably 2 days to do it.
Amazing. But it is fascinating.
It was a big secret.
Because you watch that movie, and you're aware of her from her Swedish films, but all of a sudden this voice sounds terribly familiar in a way. You say,
He fought them, Julio. And he will go on fighting them. If there is someone to make him care. Someone to say yes to him.
Then we come to All Fall Down for John Frankenheimer, which led to some other things. But All Fall Down in itself is a really good movie, I think, and a very striking movie.
A very wrenching movie in many ways. It was a terribly important movie for me. It was such an important role. Again, I was playing a little older than myself, although I was beginning to creep up a little bit by that time. But nevertheless, it was such an extraordinary family story, this beloved son who is never around and who says he's coming home. It's very, very touching and very moving, I think. And it was one of the first really kind of important character movies that I did. And it started a chain of interesting work afterwards. And it was producer John Houseman and director John Frankenheimer who were responsible for me playing that role.
But this has Warren Beatty, Carl Malden,
and Brandon de Wilde. I adored Brandon. We all did.
And if people don't recognize the name, he's played the boy that yelled after Shane.
Yes, Shane.
Yes, and Member of the Wedding.
Shane, too.
Yeah.
And I thought Eva Marie was marvelous.
She's wonderful in it.
Yeah, she is.
And what was Warren Beatty like to work with? He was such a hot young actor then.
Nobody quite understood him. He was very much his own person, and his way of working, of course, wasn't exactly ours. And
what was his way of working?
Well, he was slightly method-oriented, which, of course, I wasn't. Carl was. He understood it. And it was a very, very difficult role for Warren. I think he had a difficult time playing it, finding it. So he had to use a lot of kind of ways to get himself revved up. And if he had to be out of breath, he'd run around the stage a couple of times, to lose his breath. He couldn't show that. So that was just one of those things, I mean, he was very effective in it, I think.
So that did lead you to John Frankenheimer. Then his next film was The Manchurian Candidate. And he saw you as the woman that should play the mother from hell.
Exactly.
Yes.
He knew that I had the emotion and the power to do anything he would ask me to do. And luckily, the script was so outstanding of The Manchurian Candidate and so extraordinary, and the character was so devious.
Why don't you pass the time by playing a little solitaire?
You couldn't really place her at the beginning, and it took you until she takes out that pack of cards to know who, she's just another character. Outlandish, yes. treating her son the way she did at the airport at the beginning and all of that scene. I saw it recently, and I was amazed at what went on, you know.
Such a good movie.
What we managed to feed into that.
Such a powerful movie.
Well, that was all John. I mean, he had a wonderful eye and a feeling for the situation.
Mr. Secretary, I have a question, sir.
Who are you, sir?
I am United States Senator John Yerkes Iceland, and I have a question so serious that the safety of our nation may well depend on your answer.
When it first came out, it was considered a total oddity. It wasn't until later, when it came back and was suddenly seen by a whole new generation, that people really understood what an extraordinary work of art that it really was. And that's true to this day.
Now, Frank Sinatra had something to do with the production of it, besides being in it, right? Because I know he was the one that kept it off the screen for so long after President Kennedy was assassinated.
Yes.
And wasn't it true that his concept was to have Lucille Ball play the part, and it was Frankenheimer that really said no, and he took Frank Sinatra into a screening room and showed him All Fall Down, and Frank said, you want her, that's the one.
Well, that's a story I have heard too. But at the time, I never knew any of that. You know, oftentimes in our business, things go on which you're not aware of until years later. I truly didn't know that, and John didn't tell me.
Was that a difficult shoot?
No. We made that movie very fast. Mind you, that whole thing in Madison Square Garden took a lot of time. The mechanics of it had to be worked out very carefully, and the shooting, you know, the shooting of Mrs. Iceland, I think is a kind of a wonderful classic shot. Somebody said to me, "You're the best dyer I've ever seen." I thought it was so funny.
Again, you're playing the mother of an actor who's 3 years younger than you are, Lawrence Harvey, who's wonderful in the part.
Yes, he is. He's absolutely wonderful.
Let's talk a little about The Kiss. The Kiss with Lawrence Harvey.
Everybody asks me about The Kiss.
Yes.
We were very careful about that, and if you remember, I put my hand up so you didn't really see what I did. That's one of the tricks of the trade. But no, it did. It garnered a great deal of attention, and it was a wonderful moment.
Did you suspect it might at the time?
I know John Frankenheimer thought it would, and I realized, of course I did, yes. I knew that, you know, it would raise some eyebrows.
It certainly did. Now, you did this movie, and it's like truly a great triumph for everybody, and particularly for you. You're nominated for an Academy Award. It's your third nomination. You've gotten one for Gaslight, your first film, and Picture of Dorian Gray, your third film.
Yes.
So 2 in a row. And then this. And you didn't win. Was that, and I remember very clearly, it seemed like a shoo-in for you to win that year. Was that something you had wanted? Is it meaningful to win an Academy Award as much as we always hear it is?
Oh, well, on the one hand it is. On the other hand, I'm not sure that it doesn't sometimes put a governor on a career. Do you know what I mean? In other words, it stops you because you have to top it next time out the gate, and it isn't easy for actresses to do that. So perhaps it's just as well I didn't win it, but I sure would love to have an Academy Award. But
but you have so many other awards.
Oh, certainly. So
you have 4 Tonys right up there.
I've got 4 Tonys,
yes,
and they're
right
lovely, and I've got a few Golden Globes and
indeed.
People's Choices.
Yes.
But I mean,
and about 325 Emmy nominations. Yes.
19.
19?
Yep.
Incredible. Incredible. But if you had perhaps won the Academy Award, it might not have propelled you to really look towards Broadway as much as you did.
No, I think you're right, because I suddenly saw that I was moving into a kind of matronly mode in The Manchurian Candidate. And I thought, this isn't really what I feel I'm capable of doing. There's something that I feel has been untapped and unused, which is my ability to sing and to dance and to be a carefree woman of my own age. So off I went to Broadway.
All this leads to your great triumph as Maine. How did that come along, and did you have a lot to do with that, or was that kind of handed to you?
It certainly wasn't handed to me. I had to fight for that one. And because it represented everything that perhaps in the back of my mind I somehow had seen myself doing on Broadway, playing a glamorous, wonderful, you know, the whole kit and caboodle, I went after it. It was the only time in my life, in my career, that I really went after something full tilt. And as I say, I had to force people to accept the idea that I could do it.